Good evening. Welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. I'm your host, Flux, and we are online at diabloii.net. Joining me on the show tonight is a longtime guest who hasn't been on for a while. Say hello to Katniss/Leviathan/Steven.
What's going on, everyone?
Are we calling you Leviathan now?
I guess that's the official name change.
I refuse to call you Levi for short, though.
That's fine. Those
Hello.
Hey, and the other person's finally gotten on here.
Yeah, I had to switch to desktop. Mobile was not functioning. I don't know if there's something I have to set up on mobile or not.
What is your sexy online name, Mr. Other Person?
James.
Oh, that's right. That's why you don't have an online name. You don't have an online name.
Because I feel like online names should be your real life names because, I don't know, I feel like online names are kind of dumb sometimes because...
You must be really new to the internet.
But everyone has the name James.
Yeah, but that's just what I go by. And
So we are going to do, we've been doing the top 10 skills things for a while. We are going to cover the Crusader lately. That is Leviathan's main character of recent seasons, except that one time when the Barbarian was the best and you played him for 6 weeks.
Yeah, it was fun.
You feel really guilty about that, though, right?
No, never feel guilty about playing the Barb. That's my opinion.
About chasing the cookie cutter of the month? Never feel guilty about that.
Hey,
not in Diablo 3.
I'm surprised.
But you were really good at it, though, so it was okay. Are you still playing hardcore?
Yeah. Actually, in this season, too, I'm going away from Crusaders as well. I'm actually playing a DH, which isn't even, thrill of the month, so go figure.
Tragic. You're about 3 seasons too late there, dude. But anyway, we'll get into some general conversation, hardcore questions I had up for you about the overall macro of the game. And, of course, we have a big overall macro thing with Wyatt Cheng's post this week. And the PTR is going, and then we'll get to the Crusader skills after a little bit. But first off, a little, I guess we can get plugging and stuff. So you're still doing the whole Sanctuary Sweatshops podcast?
Yeah, that's still going strong. We're actually approaching 100 episodes soon, so that's exciting.
You and do we call him Nerdball or Loreball now? Is he still 9-ball?
He's still 9-ball.
He's still around,
He's
right?
looking for the 10th one.
Awesome. The 10th ball?
The 10th ball.
Well, once you get to episode 100, you can be at the 10th ball.
Ooh.
And where can people listen to your other podcast?
We do it live every other Wednesday. We just did an episode this past Wednesday, and that's over at twitch.tv/BlizzPro, 9 p.m. Eastern.
There you go. You're so professional.
I try to be.
Exactly. That's why you get the big bucks, right?
Yeah, the check's in the mail, they always tell me.
Exactly. And where can people find you online, James? Do you have any exciting other online ventures?
No, I'm just, I'm a filthy casual fan of the game. I don't have any online presence.
Except for your Twitter account.
Well, which I only use to follow a different game in football, so it doesn't even...
Wow, you're putting the filthy and filthy casual right now.
Yeah, super filthy casual. Filthier than I live my normal life at home, so...
Okay, so just like the previous shows, we'll get to the whole Crusader stuff in a little bit, and as always, it's not the top 10 most effective skills right now in the current macro game, because that would be really boring and would be all changed in 2 weeks, possibly. But it's going to be more of your favorite intro skills, fun skills that you would use more if they're more powerful, etc. You played some Crusader, right, James?
I've leveled 2 Crusaders to 70, a male and a female, one in hardcore. So I've played the Crusader was my main in Season 1, so played a little bit of Crusader.
Well, you've got 140 more levels of Crusader than I do, so you'll probably have more comments than I have about the old Crusader thing.
Yeah.
But we'll get there in a minute. So first thing up, one other brief thing. I've mentioned the Warcraft movie the last couple of shows. You're a big general Blizzard gaming fan there, Leviathan. I called you Leviathan. What is your name?
It's like a combo of 9-ball and Leviathan. I like it.
Cathiathan? or Leviathan.
Tethiathan?
Have you seen the Warcraft movie? Do you have an opinion on it?
No, I had a friend who wanted me to go and see it with him, but then he managed to find other people who were way more interested in seeing it. So
other people who actually wanted to see it? That was probably...
Yeah, exactly. I decided not to go and harsh their mellow. So I haven't seen it, and I don't know. I don't really have an interest in it. I played like 2 weeks of Warcraft, so...
Your other podcast co-host is a huge, long-time Warcraft fan. Has he been raging on about how you haven't seen it yet, or...? He
gets at me for all movies. Like, I'm really bad at watching movies in general, but I know he did see it, and he seemed to enjoy it.
I think we talked about that months ago, and you'd never seen Star Wars and Harry Potter and like Lord of the Rings and all these major film things that are touchstones of pop culture. You're like, nope.
Yep. Nope.
So if you could take a joystick and control the characters in the movie, would you watch it?
That sounds interesting, yeah. That is the thing, though, is I just have a hard time sitting there not doing something.
Podcast 2 weeks ago, neither guest had seen the Warcraft movie, had zero interest, and I couldn't even make jokes about how only Americans are paying Chinese people to see it for them and stuff, because they just had no interest at all in even talking about it. But then last week, both guests, nine words, what can I remember? Nerdball, Nerdwords,
Leaderboard.
Everyone's name blurs together.
Leaderboard.
And the other guy, Captain Goldfish, have both seen it and thought it was really awesome. So, and they weren't really like huge Warcraft fans. They were just sort of general Blizzard gaming fans and movie fans. Have you seen the Warcraft movie, James? Did you give a shit?
I don't give a shit, but I might see it. Just, I mean, I could see movies on second run for $4, so I might wait for that. So we'll see.
Nice.
And that'll be like 2 weeks from now, given the movie's performance in America.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, give or take. When Harvest gets over, my brothers are stopped working 24/7. Maybe we'll go see it with them. We've never played. We didn't play WoW, so we would go in not knowing any of the lore, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was trying to determine that with the show with the guests last week, and they both knew the lore pretty well. So they were like, "Well, maybe it would work if you didn't know the lore, but I have not seen the movie yet, and not really planning on it, and don't care enough to pirate it. So it's just sort of out there. maybe in like 6 months, if I've seen the DVD, we can talk about it again. And no one will care then either."
Right. It's weird because it seems like it was critically getting bashed, but then every fan that I know that's seen it has really enjoyed the experience. So some disconnect there.
I kind of wonder if like you have to know the lore and have to really be interested in it, and then it's awesome because you're like seeing it all played out in larger form.
I would say there was a movie similar to that in that regards that came out was Ratchet and Clank, which was another one based on a video game. Which was I didn't see my roommates play through most of those games. They're very, very fun games, PlayStation exclusives. And the movie came out. And the movie, if you hadn't played any of the games before, the movie was not good at all. And even if you'd played the games, the movie was okay. It wasn't particularly good or bad. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It was like, eh. But if you had not played the games, you would not have gotten a lot of the inside jokes that they had kind of referenced, even though the movie's kind of a reboot of the series. So, in my opinion, if you've never played Ratchet and Clank, do not watch the movie.
Yeah, somehow I think your warning about people who haven't played Ratchet and Clank not seeing the movie is probably unnecessary.
Well,
anyway. So the PTR just started up last week, or like right before the podcast, and we just sort of briefly mentioned it. We don't have time to play any yet. Looked at some of the patch notes. You're playing a DH now, Katniss, so you must be really excited about all the changes to Spike Trap, right? You just can't wait to just main on Spike Trap all season long.
So I've been trying to figure out exactly where it's supposed to fit, because right now it's not overwhelmingly powerful. You know how when they put things on PTR, they're supposed to come in with these insane numbers that really incentivize you to try it, and then they eventually whittle the numbers down.
Yeah, generally.
Right now, it doesn't even have that going for it. It's not super overpowered. So even when you're trying to make it work with different sets and setups, it doesn't really fit. The only place I could potentially see it getting a go is Shadow set, just because that's so single target focused, and it kind of gives you an AoE element, and you can use your Hatred Spender to explode the traps. So like every impale would explode the traps. But it just, I don't know. It still needs something more.
Yeah, I didn't really see what set it would fit with. I haven't tried it, of course, but I mean, just reading it, I'm like, this is not like a replacement for Sentry or Multi-Shot or something, you know?
No, not at all.
I was wondering if it was supposed to be in the the set where every ancient item, nightmares, the rings. Is it like just sort of a generic thing where you put it with a bunch of ancient items and the nightmare rings, and then it's got massive damage? Like it's almost like a kind of a fit-in thing.
See, that's what I was thinking, but there's not enough support items for that. I feel like it would need another like belt or bracers or something to synergize further. But there's only basically 2 items kind of going for it, and then some of the skill reworks. So, I don't know, it almost feels like it's something for people who are like, I really like traps, and they're like, okay, we'll make them a little bit better for, that small section of the community.
Those 2 people who play Demon Hunters play traps.
Yeah.
People who never got over the assassin in Diablo 2, right?
Exactly.
Have you done any PTR stuff yet, James? Have you tried any of the new stuff or followed the changes?
I followed the changes minimally. I don't have a PTR account, so I can't say I know anything other than I've watched Quinn's video on the changes, and I've forgotten most of everything what he said already. So I was like, I'm not into the competitive scene so much, so it's not, or the high tier greater rifts, I guess is what you would call it. So I really don't pay attention to the PTR until after the patch. So
until it's too late to matter.
Yeah.
So any other PTR stuff from you, Katniss, before we segue into the whole Wyatt's, announced changes for the PTR?
In general, I think the additions of the new Torment levels is kind of interesting. I was debating with Nineball whether it was actually necessary or not, and it's kind of weird because I think it may lend itself to kind of splitting the community even further across all these different difficulties when it seems like many of them aren't even all that necessary, like especially with Hadric's Gift now. if you're in seasons, as soon as you unlock that 6-piece, you're pretty much skipping like Torment 2 to 5. So I'm not sure why they didn't like restructure it and just make it so that... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, there was a great comment in the Wyatt's thing about that, how someone said they could really restructure it to be either 6 or 10 Torment levels and have whatever GR60 equivalent be Torment 10 or Torment 6, depending upon if you wanted to have 6 or 10 Torment levels. And I really felt that was because with 13, it's just like there's so many useless Torment levels. How often do you see people in Torment 9 or Torment 8?
Right.
It's everything's Torment 1, 2, 7, or 10. I feel like there's like maybe some Torment 6, but it's like nothing else that has any population. And it's just like if you're adding 3 more at the end, it's going to be even further divided the T10 people. So, yeah.
Won't everyone just go to T13? Long term?
Long term. Yeah, long term. Eventually, everyone goes to T13, but it's getting to T13 is the issue.
That may take as long as a week now with Hadrian's Gift.
Yeah, well, if you play non-seasons, it's a little bit different. But in seasons, it's I feel like in seasons you could really retool it, be 6 Torment levels. Everyone T1 is greater if 10, T2 is greater if 20, and then, everything's the multiple of 10 up to, T6 be greater GR60. I feel like would be a good...
It just seemed like when they made that change over from the monster power system to the Torment levels, the whole idea was, we're going to compress this so it's not as expansive as, these choices between no monster power to monster power 10. And now they're kind of slippery sloping their way back up again to, expanding it. And who's to say where it stops, right? If they keep increasing, which it seems like they're wont to do with all the power creep per patch, then eventually we're going to need a Torment 15, and then a Torment 20, and then a Torment 25. It's like, where does it stop?
It doesn't stop the way they've balanced the game. So
it stops when they totally nerf the macro for 4-player parties. Oh, wait.
So
the whole other thing with the Torment thing, I think people mostly agree that there could be some compression and some removal of some of the unnecessary levels. The early ones are going by GR3 each, which is like, not even noticeable.
Right.
Like if you were decently equipped and they put you blindfolded and you were in T2 versus T5, you probably wouldn't even notice one or the other. But of course, they've often said in the past about these kind of changes, they don't want someone to log in and find their character feels weaker than it used to be.
Yeah, I think that's...
So, if the new T3 is what T8 used to be, you get on there and try T8 and you're like, wait, what happened? And Wyatt Cheng's grandmother doesn't like that, as we often hear. Bashiok's,
it was Bashiok's grandma is the mean Flux. Come on, get it right.
There was a Wyatt Cheng one also. He once said...
but... Bashiok's grandma has been there since beta, or before beta even. So
yeah, and probably she took Bashiok with her, so that problem has been solved. So Wyatt's comment, it's a pretty long post. He goes on about how the current macro is kind of boring and everyone's just 1 DPS and then 3 support characters, and there's been slight changes between seasons in which is the support, which is the the DPS character. Obviously, wizards are the current massive energy tornado popularity. And he said we're not just going to nerf Energy Tornado because then there'd just be some other DPS build and then it wouldn't change the overall composition. So have you done any of the really high-end 4-player stuff lately, Katniss? And do you find it a really boring system, or do you like the way it works, or how's the macro?
Yeah, so I got into it with a support Demon Hunter this past season. I didn't do any of the high-level stuff in Season 5. And I just think in general that a 3-support meta is not as interesting as having multiple DPS, because the idea, it's an ARPG, it's an action role-playing game, and so you want to be part of the action. So sitting there and watching, these 10,000 damage ticks and you control these mobs and stuff, like, it's kind of exciting at first, but it certainly wears on you, especially over the course of a long season. So it's not an interesting play style, whereas if you can be the DPS, that's really awesome, and you get a little bit more throw from that. But then you put on top of that the way that the DPS in this meta is working, with everyone just standing at one corner and these tornadoes not moving. No one's really moving. You're just waiting for mobs to funnel in. It's really, really, really boring. So I think moving towards more of like a more active, more potential for other players to do DPS and stuff. It seems like the route they want to go, and I think for the health of the community, it should be a good way to go.
Yeah, I had a basic question was why is 1 DPS and 3 support inherently more or less fun than 2 and 2? And I mean, remember the build a couple of seasons ago, back when it was Demon Hunters with slow motion lightning balls was the whole DPS, and there would just be 2 of them sitting at the edge of the screen just endlessly shooting while a Crusader dragged stuff in there. And like the only one who actually did anything was the Crusader. Like he's dragging monsters around, and the Demon Hunters would just sit motionless and just shoot endless lightning bolts. And like every 6 shots, you do something else just to get your focus restraint refreshed. And it was like, this is exciting. So I can sort of see why they want to nerf that. And now it's a little bit different, where the wizard just kind of stands in place. Everybody else gets things in the corners for the energy tornadoes. But like you just said, I mean, I think if they do make some of the changes, it is a little more... Obviously, if you have 3 supports, that means every monster is just completely locked down indefinitely. And if there's only 2 supports, maybe there's a little bit less knockdown, a little less CC, a little less healing. And you've got to actually like react to like enemy attacks and like move when arcanes come out or something.
Exactly.
I know it's a weird concept. I mean, actually, like play the game while you're playing the game, but
I think one of the ideas that they should consider is a maximum stuns / CC time per monster at above, say, GR 75, and so you just can't permanently CC and lock down them. That eventually the 3 support 1 DPS isn't going to kill things fast enough, so that. And if you can't CC them, then you lose a lot of damage, blah, blah, blah. And so I think that would at first off create at least, but is that only going to change to now the top builds are all 2 support, 2 DPS to get around this issue? It's too hard to say.
I mean, even that's...
Probably, but at least they're a little more active that way.
Yeah, that's better than what we currently have. But he did mention, that was the second point in his long post, was that the crowd control and the pull effects are too strong right now. So, and also, like, that's a twofold problem, because one, the more stuff you pull on screen, the more you're taxing the server, and we've seen, obviously, that when you get a lot of that stuff going on at once, especially with area damage and all these different calculations, it can really tax it to the point where everyone just lags out. So that's bad. But then also, you don't move as much because you're just waiting for everything to funnel to one location, one static location. So I think they might do something like you just mentioned, with maybe like nerfing the amount of CC that you can do over time, and you eventually do have to move on and move to different locations. But yeah, just having more movement seems like it would make things a little bit more exciting.
Okay, I have a clear fix that'll make everything fine. Everyone will like this. Every 5 seconds, any monster that's been stationary for the whole 5 seconds automatically teleports to a random new location and removes all CC effects immediately. So just like every 5 seconds, that's like popcorn. Suddenly the monsters all just bounce around to somewhere new, and they're all attacking you anew. Would that be lively?
It sounds cool, but also super frustrating.
Yeah, but
only for people doing total lockdown CC playstyles, though, right?
Yeah.
Real players, exclamation points, wouldn't mind at all, or would they?
Well, I think you have like legitimate builds, like say Rancors would potentially have a stun, would have multiple stunned enemies in an area for 5 seconds, and it might take him, say, 10 or 8 seconds to kill them. I mean, but maybe that's just adjusting the numbers, but I'm not saying I think your idea is horrible, Flux, but I think there's more...
a savvier fix?
Yeah, there's savvier fixes. That's a good way to put it.
I heard something barbarian something, so your point is irrelevant.
Okay.
So another kind of related issue. Any other thoughts on the whole Wyatt macro change thing there before we move on to something?
Well,
I mean, it seems like it's a pretty good idea, but obviously it's how it actually is implemented will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what happens, mainly because 2 things. One, the changes that they're going to make will make it so that, I think he explicitly was saying that they didn't want 1 support to be able to buff to the point where that 1 DPS is better off than adding a second DPS to the group. So that's going to be huge changes, especially for the Witch Doctor, because he had some calculation where he noted the Witch Doctor could bring up to 300% more DPS. So that means all of their buff skills are going to be severely nerfed. And then across the board, you'll see nerfs to healing, nerfs to other classes, damage buffs and things. So I'm curious how that'll affect just solo clears in general, because the Witch Doctor seems like they were getting to a good point where they were happy with their builds, their gargantuan stuff, and now they're going to probably be way down the totem pole again.
As always.
As always. And then the other...
How do you think this will affect the 3-player macro parties? Because obviously a 3-player now is 1 DPS and 2 lockdown, 2 support. Can you imagine a place where there's 2 DPS and a 3-player party and then 1 support?
Wasn't that the meta in one of the earlier seasons, if I remember correctly? Was 2 TPS, 1 support? Maybe
that was before we had all the lockdown stuff that's been going on the last few seasons.
Yeah.
I'll be curious. If there's 1 support that's really strong still, like if Bard is still decent because it can do a little bit of everything, then maybe you'll have like 1 Bard and a Witch Doctor, a Demon Hunter and a Wizard or something. But then it remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing from Wyatt's post though was this idea that the developers aren't here to change items and things just to make the meta change. So I found that to be interesting because we had 2 seasons in a row of the exact same 4-player group composition, and everyone was like severely about to be pissed off if it was going to be the same for the 3rd season in a row. But to me, it sounded like he was saying they want to create an atmosphere where things just change when players figure out and develop different builds and stuff. But I think at some point, the community maths everything out, and then we know what's best. And so if they're not doing anything to like actively make the playground different, then it will be the same forever and ever. So I don't know. To me, that seemed kind of worrisome if I was understanding it correctly.
Maybe they just don't want to admit, they don't want to be, they just don't want 100 petition posts every season, right? Skill X is just too powerful with item Y now. You have to nerf that. And then as soon as they nerf that, something else becomes the too powerful skill.
Right.
They're trying to go for like the bigger holistic change, which may or may not work, but probably not. It'll be the same thing next season.
Most likely.
We'll have this exact same conversation 3.5 months from now.
Mm-hmm. The psychic flux.
Everything changes and nothing really changes. That's how online games work.
The more things change, the more they stay the same.
So anything else from Wyatt's post? He mentioned people really need to know the PTR and test this stuff out, and he said people will be shell shocked, which was the exact quote. I don't know if he meant that literally. Shell shocked was like people use that as a generic term for like surprise now, but literally that was something from like World War I when people were first exposed to massive explosions and it like blew their brains and they didn't know how to deal with that. So you're going to be exposed to such massive explosions and horrible damage in the game that you'll be horrified and traumatized, which seems pretty literally appropriate, right? I
think this is actually going to be that moment that you were just talking about where people are going to log in and they will not be as powerful as they once were.
At least in big parties. So is this a necessary correction to endless power creep? We keep joking about this. Like people do like GR 125s now, and we keep saying, it's sort of ridiculous that the legendary power on gems comes in at 25 when like you can do that like the first second you get your Hadrig's gift.
Yeah, but the problems of lack of foresight of continually increasing power of what would the long term function of the game be like?
It'd be like season 4, 5, and 6. What would it be like with continually increasing power?
Yeah. Well, it was just like. What felt powerful before is, what was, we had this conversation on the last time. It was like, if you could do GR 50 in season 1, you were an extremely well-geared, top-of-the-line character in any class, with any party. And now, if you can't do GR 50, you need to finish up Hadrig's gift. Like, it's just like, I've got GR 40 with no sets, and it's just like, the amount of power creep and Paragon farming has just made more of the problems that are with the Greater Rift system apparent. And, we've had this conversation before, but it's like, at some point they have to look at the Paragon question of, is Paragon farming too big of a deal, especially for high-end Greater Rifts?
Yeah, that kind of relates to another topic I wanted to mention about the whole the length of character build-up. Have you had a hardcore death recently, Katniss? Anytime with a high-level character this season or last season?
Actually, yeah. 2 weeks ago, I was watching another thing on one of my screens, like some people playing a game, and I forgot that I hadn't paused my Diablo, so I was in the middle of fighting Urzael, and he has his like 2 phases. I killed him in the first phase, and my brain registered that as the boss fight being over. So then I went and looked at something on the other screen, and then by the time I looked back at Diablo, I was absolutely dead. And I was in my UE set, farmed out, like everything ancient, all level 80 augments on every piece of gear, like level 82 gems, etc. So I lost a lot, and I'm actually almost just back to where I was today, like as of an hour before this podcast. So
did you pause before the podcast started today?
Yeah, I'm actually paused right now.
Okay, good. Just checking. We can't have that happen again.
No.
Yeah, so that was exactly what I was going to ask. We've had some conversations. For a while, it seemed like hardcore was getting a little too easy to recover. Like you could level up again so quickly, and it was so fast, and your Paragon points persisted even if you died, and you could find all your new gear again so quickly. And then the last couple of seasons, we've gotten much higher legendary gems, and obviously augmented gear takes many, many legendary gems to create. Do you feel like it's a lot more sting and death? I mean, it's taken you 2 weeks of pretty steady play to recover from it. Is that how it should be? I mean, in the old days, you lost everything when you died.
Yeah, this seems like the middle ground now. So now it's you lose any gear that you have on you and anything that you've done to make that gear better. And with like we're just saying, with the amount of time that is sunk into getting gems up and investing on putting them on that piece, because the only time that you kind of replicate that same loss is if you get an upgrade, actually. So if you get a piece that's better than what you currently have, you're like, well, shit, now this is way better, but I don't have an augment on it, so now I have to kind of put it to the side. I can't actually use my upgrade until I throw the augments on there, so it's kind of delayed satisfaction of finding it. But when you lose everything, then it's like, holy crap, I'm really, really behind the 8 ball now because I have way less power than I did previously. So even though now I have like ancient pieces again and most of them augmented, they're augmented at a lower level because I couldn't just hop back in and do GR80s again.
I think the real question here, why were you farming Urziel?
Bounties.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, like seriously, of all the places, Like nobody's ever done him on purpose again since the first time through Act 5, right?
Only when forced to.
Exactly, but you got that bounty there, so.
Yeah. But I think it's good. It's a good change to make death sting a little bit, because like you said before, everything was kind of given back, and you could, as long as you had farmed decently enough to the point where you had lots of stuff stashed up, ancients, another Yang's recurve, another full set of unhallowed, you would be fine when you died because all you would really lose was the 3 gems that you had in your gear.
And you could find new gear in like 2 games, even if you didn't have the full 6-piece set. Obviously not ancient and everything else, but.
Mm-hmm.
So a more general issue on hardcore versus softcore. How do you feel like the overall balance between the game modes is, Katniss? And we've had times in the past where like there were no death penalties at all for softcore. I mean, now that higher, greater rifts are a real thing, and like if you die like twice, you're not going to probably clear it. The time penalty actually kind of matters.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they can, softcore players can have many, many more chances and still trying to find it. Fishing, and if you die, it doesn't really have a penalty long term. It doesn't take you 2 weeks to recover all your gear, as Katniss just described. But at least there is an actual reason in softcore now that dying is a problem.
Yeah, what's interesting is while it is a detriment, I've actually seen a lot of those high tier clears where people post on Reddit like, I just did the #1 Demon Hunter ranked clear, and they might die once or twice. Like having that it scales up incrementally, so the first time there's like a 5-second penalty. Those aren't as bad. It would almost be better, in my opinion, because coming from the hardcore side, if it was like that 30 seconds right away, because then that's a severe punishment for dying in that greater rift. But I can understand maybe why they want to kind of ease people into, hey, you died once, be careful, it's going to get worse for you.
And remember, you used to respawn at the start of the level too, so like you were just screwed. Like the travel time would kill you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, you restart right where you were, and there's a 1 second delay.
Right at your body. Yeah. So I think there's the difference between the two, like you mentioned, is you get a bunch of tries. Like especially you might hop in. What I notice is that a lot of the softcore players, if they get a bad level, the distribution of the monsters is bad, the layout's bad, they can actually just rush right through it, kind of, carelessly using their mobility skill. If they die, they res, and it's, a 5-second penalty, and then they're on the next level. For hardcore, you lose that key pretty much because you're not going to recklessly run through again unless your build really safely lets you do that. So it's kind of I guess a time issue more than anything over the entire season. Like you'll probably try less rifts in hardcore than you would in softcore, so you won't be able to fish as much.
Looking at the overall like Greater Rift rankings and stuff, the only really big difference I saw recently was the Wizard one, and of course that's because the firebug set was giving a huge advantage to softcore over hardcore because the set basically gave infinite killing power, but you could go, you can't go to GR 100 solo in hardcore with a wizard because its damage is so spiky, Maybe you can kill them with the bug, but you're risking death, whereas softcore, it's like, oh, what the hell, just keep trying it.
Yeah, my secondary character this season is a wizard, and I have the 6-piece, and it's just like, at some point, it's like, I can't do anything. I'm literally like an XP leech, and then all of a sudden the bug happens, and I like one-shot the Rift Guardian. It's just like, it's so dumb. It is so dumb.
What's the highest greater rift you've done with your wizard that way?
I haven't done any GR. I'm still looking for other items. I think I need a wizard sword before I'm going to do GRs with the wand before I do anything with the wizard. But yeah,
Have you taken advantage of the firebug set, Katniss, just in terms of leeching off people or party play or something?
I have one friend, Togazna, who is actually like a big Diablo Inc. Gamers fan, and he, for the majority of the season before the bug was really widespread, he was playing wizard and trying to figure out like all the different builds, because there was like the Archon version with Veers, which is a little safer for hardcore. There was the one with Firebirds, which is like really risky for hardcore. And then there's like this Talrasha thing that kind of came up. So he tried like everything, and literally he would group with my support DH and just die. Like, we tried it maybe 3 or 4 times, and for whatever reason, like, we'd just get discombobulated and he would die. So my experience with it hasn't been all that great. But I have seen now that the bug is everywhere and he's using that now. Like, we haven't even grouped anymore because he just does his own thing. And he's clearing like GR85 solo in like 5 minutes. It's ridiculous.
But he feels really guilty about it, though, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, he tells me that.
It's not as satisfying.
No, you're wrong, Flux. He feels great about it.
Not in the end. He might think he feels good about it, but like deep down inside, okay, probably not now. So, any other general thoughts before we get to the whole Crusader skills and Crusader general things?
I'm kind of excited to see what the new conquest will be on the PTR once the season starts. That's pretty much my like favorite part of seasons. I get a little burnt out in the middle when it just gets down to the Paragon grind, and like James was saying, I really do hope at some point that gets reworked or addressed, or they make some sort of shift that takes us away from needing to grind Paragon all like 10 weeks, 11 weeks until that last week, and everyone does their GR push. I don't know. I think the game is moving, especially with this huge change from Wyatt. I'm curious to see what happens in the PTR, just because we need to move away from things not being dynamic, and I think that'll be healthy for the long-term part of involvement with the game. But right now, it's kind of a snore fest, in my brutal opinion.
What do you think of the Band-Aid fix of saying you don't get more than 800 or 1,000 Paragon points when you're in a GR? Like that you only can use so many, so that way you don't have an advantage to get 1,500 or 2,000 or whatever.
I think that doesn't feel as good because it's kind of like saying basically that your work is cut off. Because if you think about the fact that T10 is the highest outside of GRs, you don't need anything.
Not for long.
Well, right. But even when it's up to T13, you don't need 1,000 plus Paragon beyond that to farm efficiently anyways, especially if all your pieces are augmented. You get so much main stat beyond that. I think if it were to just make it, people have suggested this all the time, that kind of fall off. So if you get over Paragon 800, instead of getting 5 for every point that you put in, now you get 3. When it's over 1,000, now you only get 1 point or something. It seems like a simple fix, but I don't know if that's harder to implement on their side.
Yeah, I guess you have to add up the math. So what are the highest Paragons in the season you've seen so far? Like, you haven't get to 2,000 yet? 1,500?
We've seen some 2,000s on softcore. I think hardcore, some of the highest people are approaching 2,000 or probably past it now.
So, you're looking at, 1,200 times 5. You can get 6,000 more main stat, so that's a lot, right?
Yeah, it adds up, yeah. I mean, it's more than, it would be more than 100 level augments on 13 pieces, right? No, that's double. Doing math. I don't know. In either way, it's a lot. It makes a huge difference.
So you think that, obviously they could just change the experience curve so you get them much more slowly, but that's kind of no fun. You don't want to grind for 3 days to get 1 level, right?
Yeah. So
just making the levels worth less, or, the cap is kind of a weird artificial sort of a, Band-Aid kind of thing. So kind of just reducing the benefit of additional levels. I mean, people who do play more, should get some benefit for it, right? Obviously, they're finding more gear, and they're giving their gems up higher and such.
Yeah.
But you get late in the season, and the entire leaderboard, the only way to compete is to have 1,500 GR, 1,500 Paragon or more. It seems like a real time wall there.
Yeah, if you take a 2-week break in the middle, there's you can
like
still do
like
it.
you just did for the first. You just had a 2-week break.
Yeah, seriously though, you get behind the 8 ball there. So for hardcore, especially, it's dying is really bad for that purpose. But also just even if you want to do something else, like Overwatch comes out in the middle of the season and you want to play that, all of a sudden you feel really penalized to do it because the people that you were competing with at the beginning of the season who don't take that same break are now miles ahead of you and you can't catch them.
Well, for you personally, being behind the 8 ball is bad, but as long as you're not behind the 9 ball, it's not that bad, right?
But
so, what's your highest Paragon, James? Are you greatly bothered by this? Your Paragon 2500? You can't deal with it?
No, I'm Paragon 680 or something like that. So I'm not attempting to push GRs. I just play for fun. I'm an achievement hunter, so there isn't a big Paragon grind to get achievements. So
Have you found all the lore books?
Twice or 3 times. 3 times.
Once, twice, 3 times a lore book?
Yeah. Well, once before Season 1, I found them all. During Season 1, I found them all, and I found them all during Season 2. So.
Okay, so Crusader stuff. So, sort of a general intro statement on the Crusader. You mentioned a little bit of the. You sent me a little rough draft of your list, Katniss. So I could crib notes from it. I tried not to look at it closely because I don't want to just comment on the ones you're commenting on, or vice versa. Mm-hmm. I kind of went over the overall skills, and I was joking on the podcast last week that if I'd been asked to name Crusader skills cold, I could have named 3. Because I haven't played the Crusader at all since the Reaper of Souls beta, and I've never really had that much interest in the character. I was trying to figure out why not. And kind of thinking, you mentioned sort of the class fantasy, which that was one of the things we were kind of rating skills on last week and the week before. Does this skill seem to is this a real epitomization of what the class is supposed to be, or is it just something that's kind of useful and feels kind of weird or something? And that was a thing with some of the barbarian and wizard skills we've talked about. And you mentioned that in some of yours. And the Crusader overall fantasy, the initial class, you're this big, crunchy, smashy guy. You've got your heavy armor. You've got your shield. You can use a 2-handed weapon with the shield, so you're really smashy and powerful. And that was kind of how the build worked in the initial Reaper of Souls beta, and then not long after release. And if you guys remember, the Crusader was really weak at the start after the launch.
Oh, yeah.
They had to do this massive buff, which is weird, because usually the new character is super OP, right?
Well, they also released it with no damage reduction, then they put it at 15%, and then 2 or 3 patches later, they buffed it up to 30% damage reduction, like the Monk and Barbarian had, so...
And you had no cheat death to start.
Mm-hmm.
But you get to use a shield at all times. Obviously, they figured the shield would make up for some of that cheat death and DPS stuff, but defensive stuff, but toughness, but not didn't seem to work out that way. So, when were you on the general, the overall character lore and kind of the class fantasy? I played it in the beta, the Crusader, but I was never really hypnotized by the fantasy of it. I like the characters that move fast and hit fast and are kind of dex focused. I played a lot of Monk in the old days. I played a lot of Demon Hunter, obviously. I wanted to play Wizard before the game came out, but then as we always joke about with 9-ball, Nerdwords, I almost knew which one it was there on the first time. The weird state of the game, there's no real range builds for a Wizard. It's all, semi-ranged or even melee range. And so I tend to be the characters that are faster and quicker, and the Crusader's initial build was, the idea was this class fantasy. You're kind of a tank, you're kind of slow, you smash things, single target, powerful. And then basically every single change since then has made him this massively fast-moving, full AoE everywhere, shotgun, beams of death from the sky stuff. So do you have any thoughts on the whole class fantasy there, Katniss? When did you first get into Crusaders? Do you feel like they're doing what Crusaders should do? Really, we have this whole thing in the game where you can't be a powerful build unless you hit lots of stuff at once, so...
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about because, like you mentioned, when it started out, it was very weak, and the fantasy that they were giving us was this battle-scarred Crusader, and this armor is supposed to be like a moving tank, like a moving artillery, so moved really slowly but hit really hard. One of the big things that people were into was the fact that you could equip that 2-hander and still have a shield. So early on.
But it made you move really, really slowly if you did it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I forgot about that. You had a reduced movement speed. Totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that went away in a couple patches.
Mm-hmm. So I think,
and there was a passive that like turned that off, I think, or overcame it or something.
That's right. And then eventually they took that out altogether.
They just baked it right in, yeah. So
I think it has evolved, like you said, to really, like, if you look at Roland's set, huge attack speed bonuses. If you look at Seeker of the Light set, huge attack speed bonuses on, and it's all tying into the spender that you use. So tons of Blessed Hammers coming out, tons of sweep attacks or shield bashes. And even look at Invokers as well too. It's another set that really wants you to have crazy attack speed so that you can use your generator to get your thorns damage out. So like everything about the Crusader has gone towards this like crazy attack speed, which I guess is trying to call back to the fantasy of the Paladin, because one of their biggest builds was the Blessed Hammer stuff back in D2. But it definitely moved away from that whole idea of this lumbering, slow, tank everything in front of the party kind of Crusader thing. And I'm okay with it, actually, because I think one of the big changes that they made early on was having your steed charge. You could, before it had a longer cooldown, but it lasted longer, so you were kind of on the horse more, and then you would have a longer time off of it. Then they kind of met in the middle where you could ride it, you could hit the button more often to get on it, but you wouldn't stay on it as long. And now we have all these builds, especially for like Legacy of Nightmares Bombardment, where you're on the horse like the entire time that you're playing the game. So it's definitely moved forward.
Yeah, I'm sure Steed Charge will show up on your top 10 at some point, but that was obviously a big change, because initially it had a really long cooldown. Yeah. And so it was like you're really slow, but you have one super turbo speed that lasts several seconds and moves you really, really far and fast. And then you're back to this lumbering, dragging a piano along thing. And obviously we've had that's a pretty common thing over time in Diablo 3, where powerful skills with long cooldowns become powerful skills with no cooldowns once you have equipment or other things that can remove that.
It's probably another issue with the game is the abundance and availability with CDR that I don't think many people ever talk about. That, I mean, I even forgot to bring this up with about ever increasing power creep is you can get so much CDR, and it's like at some point we have to evaluate, is having that much CDR available on all these different item pieces good for the health and the high-end amount of the game. And that goes into how can the supports be so good at supporting, is because they have ungodly amounts of CDR. And
that would be a cooldown reduction if anybody's not totally up on the acronyms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's a kind of a larger macro issue there, something Wyatt did not address.
Yeah.
And that we'll get into that obviously with the Akarats at some point here with the Crusader. But there are all these skills in the game that, some short-term stuff, some powerful things. Wrath of the Berserker is obviously another barbarian example. And Archon for the wizard and such. There were these super powerful skills, and they were meant to be used for like 10 seconds, and then you couldn't do it again for a minute and a half. And I just don't think that's viable in the way the game's gone over time. When you only have 6 skills, and all of them have to be pretty useful a lot of the time, that people always find ways to do cooldown or other items to make them so you have to use all 6 of your skills constantly. And the super powerful stuff can't be, a minute and a half cooldown.
Well, especially when you add a timed event, because if you have something where you only have 15 minutes to beat it, you don't want your stuff on cooldown more than half the time you're in that event.
The long cooldowns, big damage, I felt was more well suited for vanilla, and I think that really needs to be reevaluated with how Reaper of Souls has been, how you play Reaper of Souls, because you would have in vanilla you might have long-term, you might, have this big pack and then go 2 minutes without facing another big pack that you needed to use your super awesome, powerful, ungodly, broken buff of power. So.
Well, don't forget, too, that CDR actually wasn't even introduced until Reaper of Souls. And I think it came in with the Crusader, which is this class that is insanely reliant on cooldown skills. So I think they kind of brought that in this symbiotic relationship of showing why CDR is so good, because now your Crusader is better than it ever was. But then we realized...
I remember the early days of CDR, it was a useless stat for most classes. I mean, it was like one skill you had that might be a little bit different. It's once you start getting 100% CDR on stuff, or you start getting other items. What does every Demon Hunter have in their offhand, in their cube, right?
Yeah, the Dawn.
Everyone has just Dawn. Just to get for one skill of CDR.
Mm-hmm.
And even
Anyway, so
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even when you look at a lot of the set redesigns, like the Barbarian IK set, for instance, they took away the ability. Well, I guess not took away, but they kind of originally were like, oh, we don't like it when you're in Wrath of Berserker all the time, and then they basically made it possible for that set to give you Wrath of Berserker all the time by giving you this mechanic that allows you to reset your cooldowns really quickly with Dumping Fury, and you see that kind of across the board in different ways on other sets like Blessed Hammer, Seeker of the Light. When you spam out your Blessed Hammers, it's resetting your other cooldowns.
Okay. So tell us what. So we're gonna go through 10 through 1, just like previously. Probably throw some honorable mentions in there here and there, and give us what was your selection instead of me explaining it all again. What was your selection criteria here, Leviathan?
So
what did you? What was fun? What was cool? What was powerful? A mixture of all the above.
yeah, I think when we're not talking about what's best just based on DPS and utility and all that good stuff, I think the next things you have to look at are kind of what makes you excited to use a skill. And some of that is going to be like the graphics of it, the flashiness. Some of it's going to be the way that it feels, like it's, even the sound effect on it or the way that it hits the enemy, what it does to the enemy. And also just like the feeling of, does this feel like a thing a Crusader would do? Does this feel like it's helping me kind of jump into what I'm playing and really getting into the fantasy of it?
Yeah, as we know from looking at any build and from hearing Blizzard talk about it, players will do any stupid, horrible, boring thing a billion times in a row if it's 1% more powerful. But we're pretending a little bit that that's not how people are actually playing the game, and that you wouldn't just use the same stupid skill 1,000 times in a row if you didn't have to. You wouldn't give yourself carpal tunnel syndrome hitting 4 buttons at once for 7 hours with a monk, that kind of stuff in the past. So anyway, Sonia, what do you have a number 10? Do you start with honorable mentions? How to kick it off?
I think we'll start with 10 through 1 and then do the honorable mentions. So the last one on the list, and this is from worst to greatest, I suppose, but of my favorites still, was Smite. And I'm putting it at the bottom just because it's a generator. It's not super flashy. It doesn't do anything crazy. But it's the first kind of reliable AoE that you get as a Crusader when you're leveling up. And because it's a generator, you don't have to worry about like when you use it or managing your resource. I think it's a really cool skill. And there are a couple of items that allow it to do more stuff, but you never use any of them. Like there's a chest that doubles your smite. There's a craftable flail that I think doubles it again or it lets you like split more of your smites or whatever. So there's some stuff which like it'd be cool if you could do a Legacy of Nightmares smite build, but it probably wouldn't do anything at all.
Any thoughts on Smite there, James, from your Crusader experience?
That wasn't in my top 10, but I don't know. Whenever I used Smite or just didn't feel, I just didn't like it when I was leveling up my Crusaders. So what can I say? I went for more big, more of that tank fantasy of very, very powerful, slow-hitting, big effect skills. So
what, punish or what? What's your first primary?
Well, I actually I didn't actually go primary, but my first one I have on my list is Blessed Hammer at number 10. It was just, it's a spender and it just swirls around and lots of damage. There's also that nostalgia back to Paladin and D2, and just covering the screen with massive amounts of hammers and damage.
I just miss Slow Missile when I see Blessed Hammer. That was like the fun exploit in Diablo 2 with Amazon would cast Slow Missile and they would all go in super slow motion and kind of stack up in one place and become like invisible instant death, like a multi-shot lightning enchanted. Anyway, that's totally irrelevant. What's your number 9 there, Katniss?
Number 9, I have Sweep Attack. And I really like this one because, like, once you get away from the idea of the Crusader being that slow, I guess, like, the thing that I like about the sets enabling all that attack speed is that they kind of give you this supercharged Crusader. So originally, like, you have the fantasy, you're lumbering around, you're sweep attacking things, and it's kind of cool because it has the same flail animation, which is really core to the Crusader fantasy. But then you ramp it up with the roll-in set, and all of a sudden you're just like flailing everything. It looks ridiculous. So I kind of like it for that.
Yeah, I meant to mention the flail thing. It's kind of a cool thing. It seems like it's kind of a natural extension to... okay, that was a really bad pun. It's a natural extension to ranged attacks with melee weapons. And of course, then I'm looking at the icon on Super Attack, and it's a guy holding an axe. But other than that,
Whoops.
you have any sweeping thoughts there, James?
Yeah, actually, it does look like he's holding an axe. I didn't think it when I first looked at it. It looked more like a chain hammer, but now I look at it, it actually is an axe. No thoughts there. I chose a bombardment for my number 9 skill.
You simply have a theme of big things hitting from above and all over the place.
Yeah, that's my.
Are there 8 more skills like that for the Crusader though?
Not quite, but.
Do you have Meteor at number 2 or something?
Kind of, yes. Yeah, no.
Hey, Rain of Vengeance, my number 1 Crusader skill. Yeah.
I don't even have bombardment on my list. I really don't like that skill.
Well, to me, you're calling down from the sky this massive amount of
barrels?
damage.
Donkey Kong barrels?
Barrels.
Well, I don't want to say Heaven's Fury because that's.
Well, that's why that should be on the list instead. That's a way more fantasy, cooler skill.
Well, I don't
know. Stuff from the heavens.
Just having commanding stuff to fall from the heavens seemed kind of awesome to me when I was playing my Crusaders. So,
fair enough.
Whatever.
And you always level 61 to use it too. So,
mm-hmm.
You know, you couldn't use that skill playing a Crusader in Diablo 3 Vanilla. Oh, wait.
Nope, couldn't.
Okay, number 8, Katniss.
Number 8 for me, I have Akarat's Champion. This is a staple skill for Crusaders. It's in every single build that they have. And the reasons for it being on the list are pretty obvious, just because it's really cool to transform into a god that feeds totally
and
into...
stay that way indefinitely.
Right, yeah, especially with the Akon set. Again, another kind of true embodiment of the power of CDR, because that was really the first time that people were like, oh, if I stack CDR to this certain percentage, then I can use this skill as soon as it's about to wear off. I can refresh it, and I'll just always have this working for me.
It wasn't Akarat's totally useless like the first couple of patches of the Crusader? Like, it was good for 5 seconds and then no more? And then once they had the CDR, it became, mandatory, just overnight from one to the other?
Sounds right.
Or it wasn't quite that bad?
I don't even remember. I didn't even get the 6-piece of concept until way late in Reaper.
Remember when it was hard to find 6-piece sets?
Oh my god, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I had all crafted sets for the first few months of Reaper. Kashira's vestments.
Awesome.
it was great.
And then we all moved into Blackthorns. I was like, ooh, I found another Blackthorns. Awesome. So now you're like, God damn it, another Blackthorns.
I used Blackthorns in my hardcore monk in seasons for so long until I found... And then I found enough that I could do T6, and it's then I just have 7 copies of every Inya's and Sun Wuku's. It was just geesh, I thought these were hard to find.
Yep.
And they were, and now they're not.
Yeah.
Now you just find lots of them and turn them into one really good version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like my first wife.
Yeah.
So what's your number 7 there? Or was it number 8?
My number 8 was actually Fist of the Heaven, which is...
It's got every skill. There aren't that many Crusader skills that involve bombs falling from the sky, are there?
I'm gonna...
Apparently there's at least 10 of them, apparently.
Yeah. As you can see, I like to play big, powerful effects. Goes into the flavor of the big, massive tank with slow attacking, big effect things.
And casting magic from the sky. That's part of the Crusader fantasy, right?
It is part of my Crusader fantasy. I'll put it out there.
I think it's a wizard fantasy. I'm pretty sure you're playing the wrong class.
Well, no, the wizard doesn't call things from the sky. They generate things themselves, in my opinion.
And they blow up things an inch away from themselves and nothing happens.
Yes.
Except for Blizzard and Meteor and other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what's your number 7 here, Katniss?
My 7 is Blessed Hammer.
Defend your choice. Was it just a Paladin callback here?
Yeah, so I moved it up a little bit higher just because it does give you that D2 nostalgia, and also because it has a set too, so it kind of gains some popularity that way. I think it is a cool skill. It wasn't my favorite to start. It was kind of the skill that most people would suggest you use when you were just getting your Crusader to level 70, because that's such a low cost in terms of managing your Wrath. And one of the big things was before any other set was good, you needed your Akon set, but before you got to Akons that helped you reduce all your spending, all your skills were really prohibitive. You would cast 2 Fists of the Heavens and you'd be out of wrath. So Blessed Hammer was kind of like that nice skill to fill the void.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a 10, and everything else in the category is either 20 or 30 wrath cost. So that's yeah, that was a big advantage of that one.
It's a little harder to hit stuff with, though. I mean, that whole circling pattern was the whole trick in Diablo 2. It was an awesome skill, and then you got to the maggot caves, and it was completely useless.
There's a learning curve there for sure.
Because you couldn't shoot in certain directions at close ranges and stuff. But yeah, it's a little more interesting that way. So what's your 7, James?
My 7 is actually Justice. It's a generator, and you throw a hammer, and so hurl big hammer, big tank. Continue my Crusader fantasy.
Well, at least it doesn't fall from the sky, so it's a new fantasy.
Well, yeah. So you become Wolfgar is my thing from Forgotten Realms. But
that should be your online name. You should be Wolfgar.
I will be Wolfgar.
Okay, cool. Okay, so not Wolfgar. What's your next skill?
Number 6, I have Condemn and specifically Vacuum. I love Condemn. Like, Condemn, for me, is the preferred way to play Crusader. Like, if I'm waiting for the day that Akans actually gets the correct update that it needs to become viable again. As long as Thorns exists, it won't ever get there, unfortunately, I don't think.
I completely agree with you. My number 6 is Condemn as well, and
Whoa.
I do agree with the Vacuum rune is the way to go.
It's so cool. Like before CC got super nerfed into the cap on it, I suppose, with the witch doctors ruining it for everyone else. It was so awesome to literally like sweep up an entire greater rift behind you. You would just keep going and going and going and just vacuum everything with you. So it was a really fun way to play. And
do you guys want to make out now or what? You agreed on skill.
We already made out beforehand.
Did you?
Yeah.
I did too, actually. You're a busy guy, Katniss.
Woo!
You have very soft lips, though. Okay, what's your number 5, Katniss?
Number 5, Fist of the Heavens for me. I love that skill. Before I got into a set, like I was saying, I had the Ashera's vestments and stuff, so I was going for a really like pet-centric build early on. So another one of the skills that will feature for me later is Phalanx with Bowman. I had the Ashera's to get all the followers out, and I was basically just trying to like do anything that made it so whenever I was out of wrath, I was still attacking stuff. So Fist of the Heavens was my spender in that, and I really liked the last rune on it, which I actually don't remember now, so I can look it up while we talk. But it was really cool because it
Retribution.
Retribution, yeah. And it was super weird because it didn't work properly with levels. Like if you were on the ground and there was stuff above you, like you couldn't shoot at it. But if you stood at a certain distance, it almost reminded me of the frozen orb of old. Like if you stood at a certain distance, you could actually hit stuff twice with it. So it was this really janky skill early on. But I felt like I was discovering something cool by like getting the most out of it for its ridiculous cost.
Okay, I'm guessing either that or Falling Sword is number 1 on James' list. So what do you have for the next one on your list, James?
My next one is actually, as he kind of talked about, was Phalanx. I really never liked playing with it, but in my quote-unquote Crusader fantasy of summoning massive amounts of holy minions by your side to deal away with death's minions just seems awesome. And it's, I don't know, whenever I've played the Crusader, and granted it hasn't been for a while, it it felt underwhelming, but at the same time, it's like, I really wish this would become a top of the line build per se. So that's
Did you ever try Phalanx with the horses, Stampede, whenever that was in season?
I didn't play that season, so.
Gotcha.
Likely excuse. You just couldn't handle the power, could you?
No, I couldn't. I couldn't let go of my ways of the barbarian.
So speaking of barbarian, we had this conversation about the same thing with the Call of the Ancients for barbarian. It feels kind of like, is this part of the character fantasy that you can summon like the undead gods of the barbarian culture to serve you? And Phalanx isn't quite the same thing. It's like a bunch of it's like a kind of a half-assed skeletal things that are just sort of there, like skeletal, swords dudes. They're not skeletons, but they're just sort of knights. They're like generic whatevers. Mm-hmm. Do you feel? I feel like that's part of the Crusader fantasy. Like he doesn't have a lot of like undead summoning skills,
But they're not. They're not undead. They're
holy
knights. Holy knights, like angels. You're coming. you're bringing angels to your side is the way I feel about it. It's just they kind of suck.
They're identical and they walk in a line with shields sticking out.
They just suck. Like that's the problem with the actual usage of the skill is for the most part it just sucks.
So they're like the angels you see in Act 4, where they're just getting the floor mopped with them left and right.
Completely agree, Flux. That's the best way to put it.
So neither of you guys feel this is like inappropriate to the class or whatever because they're not like special whatever. So they're just sort of like he's like a general and they're like his soldiers kind of thing.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. Because even when the Crusader lore, you look at some of the stuff like Crusaders have apprentices that kind of walk around with them, and as soon as the Crusader dies, the apprentice takes up their shield. So you can kind of imagine them having
the previous masters and lines. Their holy spirits is one of the ways I think about it. So.
Maybe they're just dead apprentices.
Yeah, it could be that too.
That works.
Didn't we all assume there'd be like an apprentice Crusader NPC in the game when we first started playing Act 5 and read that lore? Like, I totally assumed you'd like run into one somewhere. You're like, my master is missing. Where's my master? And he's got his little shield. He's all like running around, and somehow that's never in the game. Act 6?
Act 6. Tinfoil hat.
Yeah, don't hold your breath. Okay, what's your next one up here, James?
My next one, number 4, I have Consecration. Goes into the Crusader fantasy of you have this holy ground that you fight under, and you become more powerful inside of it. The effect is underwhelming for the most part, but at the same time, I feel like the possibilities of it are just, especially with say the Fearful rune, which causes enemies to run in fear in you. That sort of gives me the fantasy of this big, huge tank, long cooldowns, big, huge effect skills. So.
Yeah, so I like Consecration as an idea, but I didn't include it on my list just because it has really low utility. In a game where you have to move so quickly to get stuff done, like having anything that makes you stationary doesn't seem like I want it.
I never, like, when I got to 70, I actually figured out how to use my skills and got sets. I never used Consecration. But I feel like, in theory, in my Crusader fantasy, it is an awesome potential skill. And that's why I put it in there. But it's not, it's again, like Phalanx, it just sucks. So.
Well, that was kind of my rules for the show. Pick the ones that are cool, whether or not they work or not.
Yeah, I'm going off the rules you said, Flux, not the ones that work with the skills which he's doing. So I feel like my list is valid and his is not at this point. So.
What?
Uh-oh.
No one uses sweep attack at all, and no one uses smite, but I have both of those on my list. I'm not necessarily like naming skills that are actually useful. Otherwise, it would just be like bombardment.
Okay, speaking of, what's your next skill there, Katniss?
So my number 4 is actually Falling Sword, because I think that has a really huge... it was one of the first skills that we actually saw on display for the Crusader when they had their like preview videos. So I felt it was really iconic to the class. Just this idea of you become the artillery from the tank and you fly across the screen and land on stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say we should do a list like the top 3 most iconic skills for each class, like what really defines them. And this one I think is, I guess Blessed Hammer or like Shield Bash are pretty close for this character also.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed Hammer mainly just gets baggage from D2, but definitely this skill.
Mm-hmm.
Was everyone was really excited to try this one initially in the game. Like it's just like a one-shot boss thing back in the old day when that was like an unusual talent. Before everything was a one-shot boss skill.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your number 3, Katniss?
Number 3 is my Phalanx Bowman. I really gravitated towards this skill mostly early on because it didn't have any cost associated with it. It was just a really short cooldown skill for Crusaders, so I thought it was useful in that sense. But also like the idea of just having people around you, kind of the Crusader, like, I am the general, these are my army dudes, and they can shoot on their own, they target their own stuff, so that's kind of why I threw them in there.
How's their AI?
Good choice.
Better than Mercs?
Decent. They attack normally what's pretty close to you, so I think in that sense they kind of eliminate threats as they get closer to the Crusader, so they're almost like, your protectors in a way.
Remember how bad the AI was for stuff early in D3? Like, they get caught on every little corner.
Yes.
And, like, every little rock, and you'd be, like, 10 screens away, and you hadn't seen your Merc in, like, 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Even, they made a pass on Phalanx as well, too, because early on, if there was, like, differences in levels again. So I think for whatever reason, just the the difference between being up and being down was really weird for Crusaders because a lot of their skills didn't work quite well with different levels. But they made a pass on them so they could actually like, shoot up and stuff.
And now they're cool?
Pretty cool.
Okay, you mentioned Phalanx earlier, James. So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Heaven's Fury. Bringing down big holy damage, big tank, big damage, much big holy damage by Crusader Fantasy. So
if there was a skill called Fist of the Heavens Fury, would that be your number 1?
No, it wouldn't be.
You get them both at once?
No.
There's an idea for a set though.
Fist of the Heavens Fury would combine them both.
2 skills that aren't really used at all. That would be nice.
But they look shiny though.
Yeah. I have Heaven's Fury as an honorable mention. I do like the idea of just this wrath of the gods from above raining down. But I've actually never used the skill before, so that's kind of why I couldn't justify actually putting it on my list.
Well, that was like the bomb, like in the very early Crusader, like in the beta. That was the fun. The one that has the 3 beams, right? And it would just hunt stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the reverse, like Star Trek. It looks like a beam me up, but it's like a beam me down thing. It was fun to watch them just cook things. And it's funny, that's of no use ever since.
No, except for when it was bugged last PTR. It was like doing 1 billion thorns damage to everything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what's your, what do we have to, 3 here? Or was that 2? That was 3.
That was 3.
Okay, what's your next one? Who's behind? You haven't had your 3 yet, right, James?
I did my 3. My 3 was Heaven's Fury, which we just got to
Okay,
talk
cool.
about.
So what's your number 2 there, Katniss?
Number 2, I have Steed Charge, and specifically I have Drawn Quarter.
Finally the horsey.
The horse. I mean, it's we're getting to the high point of the list, so I love Steed Charge. I think, like we started this whole thing out with, it's this moment of suddenly like a burst of speed, like you just take off. You're like, screw it, I'm going in. I'm gonna fight these enemies. But I love it for it being an amazing utility skill because you can also use it to get out. You can use it to reposition. And I love Drawing Quarter in particular because early on, it was really cool to just see the animation of dragging these monsters behind you. You're just like this badass of like, I don't want to fight you here. I want to fight you over here. So I'm just going to drag you across the screen.
Or more like, I'm going to drag you over here into the death ray of what other DPS characters in this party, and I won't actually do any damage to you at all because I'm a support character.
Yeah, that's what it ended up being most useful for.
That's
Okay, so close enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was like really powerful like environmental effects, like little those little volcanoes and fires and the crates and stuff that can one shot you. What if those worked on monsters? You got like a whole build that's like dragging stuff into like spike traps, dragging things into like flaming floors. That'd be kind of fun.
No.
You have to be the most patient player ever.
Only something them really powerful. So what's your number 2 there, James?
My number 2 is this was actually number 4 on his list is Falling Sword. It's the sort of the iconic trailer / skill that we got to see. You fall from the sky, massive holy damage. I mean, just everything you want in the massive tank Crusader fantasy of mine. So.
Okay, you guys have been listening to each other's list. What do you think his number 1 skill is going to be, James? Can you predict it? Is there a theme here you see on developing, and which one hasn't been mentioned yet that should totally awesome?
I can't think. I'm gonna hear it, and it's gonna be, it's gonna hit me across the head. I don't, but I can't think of it. But he should know what mine is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think you know what his is, Katniss?
I'm trying to think of what thing falling from the sky I haven't seen yet. I don't know. I mean, I feel like we might have the same one, or I feel like his might be shield bash, maybe.
No, my number 1 is it was on your list. I think you was near number 7 or maybe number 8.
Oh, Akarats.
Yes.
Yep.
Become God. Like, I mean, there's nothing much more you can say. It's become super tank. Already tank big damage. Now you're super tank with even more damage. So, really, I felt like the way I play Crusader in my Crusader fantasy, there couldn't be anything else at number 1. So,
did you play Crusader early on when Akarats was useless and had no cooldown and stuff, or you've only played it since it's been super powerful?
I played it before Season 1 on hardcore, and I I played that, and then in season 1 I played it with. I actually played Holy Shotgun. So
nice.
So
if we were doing this podcast, if this was episode 42 or something instead of 210, and Akarat's champion was still crap and didn't have any cooldown stuff, would you still put it on your top 10 list?
Yes,
James?
it would still be number 1 because of the fantasy of, even though at that point it'd be a junk skill, you want to be this massive frontline beast, this tank, and this allows you to multiply everything in one thing, and the effect for it is you're basically double in size as well. So it has a great effect visual for it. So even if the skill was completely useless and no one ever played it and I never used it, I would still have it as my number 1. So
is your number 1 barbarian skill Wrath of the Berserker?
Yes.
Okay, I think we see a theme here.
Yeah.
So what's your number 1, Katniss?
I think this is the clear number 1 in my opinion. Blessed Shield. Like, this is an amazingly awesome skill. It has really good flavor. Like, you're literally the shield, the iconic piece of gear that you actually cannot play a Crusader without. Like, you must equip a shield at all times. You have that going for you. You throw it at enemies, it bounces around, it's really good, like, motion, flavor, and then you combine it with, like, some of the, at the time, the most powerful and rare things for the Crusader between Gerfalcon's Foot and the Jecking Board, and then it became this godlike skill, no resource cost anymore, and everyone was like, I want to be Captain America. Like, when people saw that setup and realized that it was going to be really awesome, I think everyone was gunning for that build at some point if they wanted to play Crusader.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I don't have a Steed Charge or Blessed Shield in my top 10 is just, I guess you could say I'm too much of a hipster. Like, everyone was using it, and...
That was my first thought when I saw your avatar, by the way.
Obviously, yes. It just, I don't know, I didn't like playing with it, I guess is basically my point, is I didn't like Blessed Shield, and I don't like Steed Charge. I dislike the fact it's basically a must-have because it's the only... repositioning is such a big deal. I guess it goes more into my Crusader fantasy versus game mechanics. So, but I completely buy that for most people, Blessed Shield and Steed Charge should be 1, 2 in some order for most people. So.
I'm not surprised neither of you mentioned any of the laws.
Yeah.
No one mentioned any of the war cries for the barb. I'm sure when we get to the monk eventually, no one's going to mention any of the auras. What are they called? Mantras now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're totally functional, and like you almost always have to have one on every class.
Yeah.
Of course, that may be not the case with the Crusader. I don't even know shit about this class, but everyone has it, and it's like, is there any way to make an aura warcry type skill cool enough that you would ever put it in a top 10 list?
I mean,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think they're not flashy at all. Like, you just hit a button and it like gives you an effect, right? So it's not that
you'd miss it if it was gone, but you don't really care when it's there.
Yeah,
right? It's just...
But I think the class that does it successfully is actually the Demon Hunter, because you can kind of look at their companions as the equivalent, because you get a whole bunch of different ones based on which one you pick. It has an active and it has a passive, so they kind of function the same way, but they have way more flavor because it actually produces a product, and that thing does something for you on the screen that's visible.
So if Law of Justice summoned like a coyote, would it be cool then?
Imagine if it summoned your apprentice.
Imagine if the laws summoned different types of Phalanx instead. Ooh. or it had a different, had different summons. One summoned a Phalanx when you activated it. One made Consecration when you summoned it. Another one did a Fist the Heavens or something when you summoned it. Depending upon the different ones, I think would make it them viable, having the Aurora, but then having an active to go with it that went with the laws would make them viable.
Okay, I hope you got all that down, Wyatt. If you need to, I can get a transcript for you.
He shouldn't listen to me. I'm very, very poor at game balance and design. So.
Yeah, and much like the laws themselves.
Yes.
Or it would be cool.
One of the things...
Sorry, go ahead.
Neither of you guys... Yeah, go ahead, dude.
I was just going to say, there is that item that they added for Wizards. It's a source where it would summon the other spenders that you had on your bar. And that would be kind of cool if the built-in mechanics for a law, like James was mentioning is, you hit the law and then it actually casts like one of your spenders that you have on your bar. So you kind of just got some extra utility out of it. Then I think we would like really, really love them, but we'd still use them anyways.
Yeah, they're functional but not flashy, and maybe that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
One of the things neither of you guys mentioned at all, maybe it's on your top shield, was provoke, which isn't. It seems to me kind of fits the fantasy, and like it's all CC, and it's like this sort of like you're this battle commander, you're like controlling the enemies a little bit. I'm sure it's useless in every build in the game at this point, but
it's actually great for Thorns builds. It's a pretty high staple in Invokers, and it's actually one of my honorable mentions because, like you mentioned, it kind of fits into the fantasy of you being this badass tank thing saying, like, come and hit me. Like, there actually is a rune called a hit me for provoke, and it increases your block chance. And enemies are taunted towards you, so now you're just the one who they want to beat on, and you're just taking all the hits, and especially with Invokers, you're actually gaining a lot more offensive output from them hitting you, so it's great.
I had the same logic on Shield Glare, which neither of you mentioned, which again, it's sort of a defensive thing, but obviously it uses your shield to like do some cool power. Like you had the Captain America ping pong shield as your number one skill practically. So here's another one that does cool stuff with the shield, seems to fit the fantasy well, and not even honorable mention.
It's not graphically enticing enough, in my opinion.
Yeah,
graphically enticing enough.
Yeah, that's.
It has great utility. It makes it's really powerful there's like two rune choices, one that boosts your damage, one that gives you a ton of resource back. So I think it has a lot of ability to be used, but in general, it's like a flash and then it's gone. You kind of forget about it.
Any other honorable mentions for your list, James?
No. I mean,
there's only 10 good skills and you covered them all?
No. Not really, but all the honorable mentions, in my opinion, have been, you've either brought up or they've been covered by.
You had some thoughts on the passives, Katniss?
Yes. So I think that
we're talking about how awesome the barbarians are and how awful the wizards are was the last two shows.
I think Crusaders...
Where does the Crusader fit into that ecosystem?
They have a good mix of really, really good ones, like the...
Heavenly Strength.
I actually dislike both. I dislike Heavenly Strength, and I dislike Fervor, or whichever the one-handed equivalent is.
Yeah, Fervor is the one-handed equivalent.
Because they're so mandatory. Like, if you're equipping a one-hander, you're using Fervor. If you're equipping a two-hander, you're using Heavenly Strength. So they should almost be baked in because they're mandatory choices. Like, there actually is no choice of passive in that case. And you'd be crazy not to use one or the other, depending on what weapon type you're using. But then for example, you go to something like Finery, which gives you that percentage increase to your main stat, and that scales insanely with Paragon and now with the augment system in there too. So it's like, I would argue it's one of the most powerful passes in the game.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the passives on the whole, James? Do you think the Crusaders measure up to other classes, or are there obvious?
I think they're not as awesome as the Barbarians overall, but I don't know. It's hard to say where I would rank them. 2 to 6, but I think there's a good mix in here. There's a couple really cool ones. Yes, I get the point that Heavenly Strength and Fervor are mandatory, but at the same time, I feel like Heavenly Strength is sort of, to me, the defining, and Fervor, the defining characteristics of what kind of Crusader are you going to build. So,
yeah.
There's both ways, and I definitely understand your gripe with it. But there's a great one for hardcore, which there's Indestructible. There's Holy Cause, which is a really good one when you have holy damage. Finery is... Go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about to me, if you look at the passes in general, a lot of them are very skill specific. So it's like if you're building a Blessed Hammer, you're going to take Blunt. If you're building something with Shield Bash, then you're taking like Towering Shield and things like that. So how do you feel about them being so directed towards specific skills versus not as versatile as like the bars, where it's just like, you get a damage increase based on these conditions?
I like it better than the barbs, where you have you have just a general damage increase, but the fact that they have, item specific / skill specific, things. So in some sense it feels customizable, but your point, it feels somewhat mandatory that you have them too. So it cuts both ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling over the Crusader passives for possibly the first time ever, and I'm just what you said. Amazing, like 80% of them, it seems like, it only affect like 2 or 3 skills. Like there's so little generic anything.
Yeah, they're all.
I can't remember how many of these actually name like 2 or 3 skills that they work on. My other thought is that fanaticism like sucks, and it makes me unhappy because that was my whole thought when we were mentioning could there ever be an aura type skill good enough to be in your top 10. I think in Diablo 2, fanaticism was in the Paladin's top 10 skills because it was such an awesome. It was like massive attack speed, which was hard to get otherwise. Really awesome for party members, and it had huge damage, and it looked really cool. It's like this burning, flaming effect around your feet, kind of.
Yeah, but you had unlimited skills, unlimited skills in Diablo 2. You could have every skill on a high key in Diablo 2, and you can only have 6 in Diablo 3. So there's that difference of limited options. So
I'm not sure that's relevant to my point, but yes, that is true.
Yeah,
but of course, if you put every skill on, you don't have skill points to really max any of them out as much as you wanted to. So it did make a difference. But I mean, that was a really cool skill, a really cool aura in Diablo 2, and it's a crappy passive in Diablo 3. That makes me unhappy.
Well, I mean, it's crappy only because the numbers are so small. If it was increase the attack speed of Punish, Slash, Smite, and Justice by 250%, then it'd be like, oh my god, this is the most broken passive in the game. No, I don't actually think that.
It still wouldn't look cool though.
Yeah, it still wouldn't look cool, but at the same time, it goes to the problem of the laws. Yes, they're mandatory because the numbers are good enough. If the numbers weren't good enough, no one would run any, and that's the problem with these passive auroras. It's all about, are the numbers good enough, and not is the passive cool. It's very hard to get a cool passive on these.
I do have one law that I probably would want to honorable mention, which is Laws of Hope with specifically Wings of Angels, because that one, it basically gives you more movement speed, but it also affects your party members too, and there's a visual cue to it, like it puts a shield around your party members, so it gives them a little bit of a shield, gives them a movement speed increase, and with this specific rune, you can actually move through like the Waller fix, you can move through, it gives you the same effect as the illusory boots. So I think that, if anything, has the most like flashiness to it of a law that we have, really.
Possibly use that if you were doing like speed farming or something.
Exactly.
Do you use that when you're doing bounties or something like that?
Yep, absolutely.
Zoom. One thing that I mentioned earlier and kind of forgot about too, the whole thing was steed charge. What do you feel about the animal form? You turn into a horse. You turn into a guy on a horse, but you don't have a horse in the first place, so whatever. Is the horse appropriate? I mean, I guess that makes sense with the Crusader, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. It's
okay.
What else would you turn into?
Well, therein lies the question. If other classes turned into some animal form when they made their fast movement speed, what would it be? So if you're a witch doctor, instead of just looking sort of ghostly and running like a douche, if you turn into some sort of animal, what should a witch doctor turn into?
A chicken?
Yeah.
He does that anyway, though.
Well,
so mission accomplished, right?
Yeah.
I said a jellyfish because they're all tentacly and they're known for terrifying movement speed. That's probably not true.
I mean, you could turn to a skeleton or something too, right?
Like a fast skeleton? Okay, so what would the barbarian turn into? If, like, Furious Charge made you give you an animal form for a tenth of a second, what would it be?
Grizzly bear, maybe?
Yeah, some kind of, like, big mammal, like a yeti or something.
Yeah, I thought, but of course, the druid did turn into a bear, so I was a little torn on that one.
And the druids are, related to the barbarians, so it's kind of that's why I thought
only on their mother's side, twice removed.
3 times removed, actually. Flux, get it right.
Okay, so what would the monk turn into? If the monk had turn into something when he did dashing strike.
Water.
Water, yeah.
Something.
I said badger.
Slippery.
Badger.
Mushroom.
I'm not sure why, but it's like.
Yeah.
Okay, so how about the wizard? If a wizard had an animal form when they teleported, what would it be?
Phoenix.
Ooh, I like that.
That's what I thought, but it's not really an animal, so it's I said hawk.
Yeah, the falcon, whatever you want to call it, but.
Okay, then Demon Hunter would also be a hawk, but like a different kind of hawk.
Raven.
Panther.
Panther. I guess Panther could work.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, last one. What would a necromancer turn into?
A skeleton.
Character, Diablo 3?
A vampire.
Oh, yeah. The vampire set, of course.
Which obviously was, ironically, was the slowest moving thing in the world when they had that stupid set on. I don't know if the correct answer is a deer. A deer just like lilies, always.
For the necromancer?
That's a Harry Potter reference. Come on, dude.
Oh, I missed it.
The whole Severus Snape and his imagine, whatever. Never mind.
Remember you said
okay, Lily Potter. So any final thoughts on the Crusader stuff, guys? You're happy enough with it? Neither of you were completely out of your mind in the other person's opinion based on your top 10?
I think they, if you think about the fact that they came in as an expansion character, I think they had a lot of time to really get everything right with them in terms of really flashy stuff that feels kind of core and iconic to the class. So I think there are a lot of skills there that represent what you would want a Crusader to do.
And the problem was they just weren't balanced right on the initial pass because they were way underpowered.
Yeah, like they had the right graphics,
design,
but not the right numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts there, James? You agree?
He said it best as I could.
Case in point, he said it best as I could. that was the double truism right there. But you are correct. He did. So, any final thoughts, guys? I mean, season's churning on. You're neither of you are actually playing a Crusader this season, though. Oddly enough, right?
No.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
You're just long-term experts on Crusaders.
No, I'm not a long-term expert. I'm just a guy with an overinflated ego and opinions that thinks we should be talking about barbarians every class podcast.
Did you listen to the Barbarian podcast a couple weeks ago? Was everything wrong in the top 10 list?
No comment.
I don't think Wrath of the Berserker was number 1, so obviously it was wrong.
Not my opinions.
Are you looking to go to a Crusader next season, Katniss, or are you just going to try something different?
I really miss it, not playing one this season, but my biggest issue with the class right now is that they tried really hard to make Thorns good and to make the Invoker set useful, and I think they succeeded, but I actually think they did too good of a job. So right now, if you're not playing a Thorns setup, then you're playing the Crusader wrong, and that's unfortunate because that means 3 other sets, and especially one of those sets being the most general set that we have, so allowing you to use like Fist of the Heavens. They're adding items for that on the PTR, and they're next to useless because they don't output any damage comparable to what Thorns can do, and you're still very fragile, whereas with Thorns you can get all this defense and it won't affect your DPS output at all. So there's this weird imbalance between what we can do, and I that's what shies me away from it, especially this season, because I did Thorn stuff last season. I don't know if I want to do it again.
Well, that'll be the problem with Demon Hunters and Spike Trap next season, so just expect it and plan ahead. You're being a barbarian again next season, right?
It sounds like it.
There's a new skill. By God, that's going to be the most powerful. James, I also know, I don't think we mentioned Thorns once until now. I mean, like you mentioned Invoker a couple times, but there obviously that was sort of a fantasy of the Crusader. You know, you have shields, you can have like spiky armor on, like it's part of your whole thing. But it took them a long time to finally get that into the game, and now you say they've overdone it. So.
Yeah, I think the only way to really add diversity is, unfortunately, to nerf Thorns. But I want to keep saying that, but I actually don't know how they would do it, because I think it's really cool to have a set that doesn't rely on critical hit chance or critical hit damage. It's nice to see gear that doesn't need that. But when you don't need that, you can pick up so many other affixes that typical Crusader setups need to really, hem and haw for and make these sacrifices for.
I mean, that's just the problem with the infinite scaling and greater rifts, is that any slight difference just gets magnified because of the infinite scaling and whatnot. Is if there was just sort of a fixed sort of in-game difficulty, we wouldn't be running in. It would be like, okay, yeah, you can do more damage, but with Thorns, but the other builds would be still viable for the high-end in-game. But
that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a problem that they've had since the GR system has come out. That once you get, instead of saying GR50's it and everything's a shoot of how do you clear GR50s the fastest, it's now how can you output the most damage with the most tankiness in the highest GR possible. So
right, like right now it's T10, you can run a ton of stuff. You could run a Condemned Crusader if you wanted to, but you'd still be slower than a Thorn setup, but only like a few percentage points. So in the end, it doesn't matter that much. It's
10 seconds probably.
Exactly.
And that's 10 seconds is a negligible time. It's like just play whatever you have more fun with.
Right, but then when you have a Thorns Crusader running through GR80 in 7 minutes, and then you're dying on your Khans Crusader, That feels really bad.
Which one works better with your bots?
The cons.
Does it? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is that what your favorite botting set is?
Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. I'm sorry.
Comment deleted.
Comment deleted. Yeah, Wyatt wouldn't like that. There'd be no chicken and waffles for you this year. Okay, guys, thanks for your time. You've been listening to Crusader stuff. We still have the Monk, the Witch Doctor, and the Demon Hunter to go. I think we're probably doing the Monk next time. I have a volunteer who wants to do monking time, so I'll have to refresh my memory on that. Maybe I can drag Xanth out of his grave or whatever he's been hiding for the last 2 years. He was a big-time monk, and also Witch Doctor as well, but haven't heard much of him. He had another baby or something.
I want to chastise him because he put out a tweet today that said instead of Season 7, he's going to play Path of Exile.
That's just unacceptable.
What a jerk.
Yeah.
I guess the check cleared probably, right?
Yeah.
They sent him 10 pounds of kiwis in a 5-pound bag, and he's ready to roll.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so thanks for listening. Yeah, so this is the Diablo podcast. We're on the line at diabloii.net, and follow us on iTunes or not. I don't really care, frankly. And, should Crusader have a way to herd cows?
Yes.
Yes.
The only reasonable answer.
One form of Phalanx should have ghost cows.
What if there was a legendary power that transformed the horse to a cow and you would ride on that instead?
That should be an item that would make that happen.
That should be what the Steed Charge item does instead of what it does. Turns you into a cow.
Would it make bad puns as well?
No.
Like it's a moving experience.
Oh my god.